Slipping into the Red Keep, Blood and Cheese seized hold of Queen Helaena and her children, and then offered Aegon II's wife a brutal choice. Which one of your sons would die? She wept and pled and offered her own life to no avail. In the end, she named Maelor, the youngest, and deemed him too young to understand. Blood and Cheese killed Prince Jaehaerys instead, and his mother screamed in her horror. Then, Blood and Cheese fled with the prince's head. True to their words, they were only after one of Aegon's sons. Now, that was a quote from The World of Ice and Fire, and in this video, I want to discuss a potential leaked scene that involves that event in the casting of Helaena Targaryen, or Helaena if you're nasty. Now, you may want to take this video with a grain of salt, because it's likely a load of horseshit, but as always, here's your sign. Now before we get started, please do me a massive favor and slap a like on this video. This like is gonna be 420. Also, and this is the most important part, make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a video throughout this long night. And a super special thank you to Brick23, Bloody Tyrant, Leah Hendrickson, Angie Delehanty, Nancy Tockstein, Marilyn Miller, Fred Wicks, BEL-a-Donna, Cater Tot, Joe Swag, and Damon Mayo. They are all members of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/YourHuntsReviews, and if you all watching this video are interested, check out the link down below in the description or one of the links that's popped off during this video. Now, Helaena Targaryen may not have been the thinnest or the most attractive Targaryen as she's described in the books, but she was, however, described as being loved by the small folks. I sort of picture her for this new and up-and-coming series, House of the Dragon. I sort of picture her as like a Marjorie Tyrell. Aegon II is going to be like a grown-up Joffrey. Maybe not quite as sadistic at first, but what happens to him turns him into sort of a worse version of Joffrey. But I picture Helaena as like a Marjorie, sort of like an involuntary victim of the Dance of Dragons without actually being like too much at fault. You got to remember, Marjorie was placed in that situation by Olenna, and she ended up dying and losing everything close to her because of it. And this is very similar to what happens to Helaena Targaryen. Just to sort of summarize for those of you who aren't aware, Helaena Targaryen is the wife of Aegon II when he's crowned after the death of Viserys I. Helaena gets married to Aegon II, and the two of them, at the beginning of the war at least, rule in King's Landing as the usurper king and queen. And just to clarify, her parents are King Viserys I, who sort of starts the dance by, naming Rhaenyra his heir and never changing that to Aegon II. I mean, King Viserys wasn't necessarily the best king, wasn't necessarily the worst king, but he sort of had a passion for food and other things other than, making sure he had a clear line of succession. This is a story that's repeated time and time again throughout Targaryen history. You have something a little bit similar, although more insane, happening during the Blackfyre rebellions, where instead of a son and a daughter, it's two sons. One of them, who is the Prince of Dragonstone, and the heir prince, the one who's going to take the crown, isn't exactly the best candidate for the choice, and the king's other son, the bastard Daemon Blackfyre, is the more likely choice, and he's actually given King Aegon's sword, which a lot of people take that, or he took that as he was the one who was meant to rule. Like, the line of succession wasn't clear. Well, I mean, it was clear, but it wasn't clear enough for there to be no debate about the matter. And Georgia said in an interview before that back in the Middle Ages, the way that they would settle debates and shit about who's supposed to take the throne, who's got the right lineage, and like what the succession laws are, there would be a war. But anyway, getting back on track here, Queen Helaena, in the future queen, but growing up, Helaena was like Viserys's only or second daughter, but only daughter with his marriage to Alicent. Alicent mostly gave him kids. Most of the kids she gave him were sons. But since Queen Rhaenyra and Queen Helaena were the only two daughters of Viserys, the dynamic is somewhat mentioned in The Princess and the Queen, and we get a little bit of what's alluded to it, but their relationship is kind of a mystery, and I think that's something the show is going to expand on. It'll be interesting to see if these two women who have, very similar upbringings, what kind of relationship they had. Now, it should be noted that Helaena was only 21 when she died, and she was born in 109 AC, and she died in 130 AC, which is like the head of Dance of the Dragons. We don't actually know how far along or where exactly in this storyline the show is going to begin, but I'm pretty sure she'll be aged up a little bit because she does have three children with Aegon II, those being Jaehaerys, Jaehaera, and Maelor. But speaking of not not exactly knowing how far in the timeline the show is going to start, according to this person who sent me some of this leaked info over on Twitter. Speaking of which, make sure you go follow me at sir_hunts. But this person states that, and just to clarify, this is a different source than the one who claims that the series starts with the Greens versus the Blacks being established. But their version of the timeline for the first series is a lot darker, and it involves a lot more of an intense first season. Now, they stated that blood is being cast, not necessarily cheese yet, but they're stating that blood is being cast, and the description is as follows. They are looking for a 35 to 50-year-old balding male actor, and this actor must have a deviant demeanor. It will begin filming in mid to late 2021, and the actor will need to be on location again for follow-up scenes and must have experience riding a horse. Now, so far, no one has been cast, or is on the short list, rather. But according to this person, someone who has started having actresses being seen for her part, or being auditioned, rather, is Helaena. And the monologue/dialogue they're given to audition with is actually that of the death scene of Blood and Cheese and Prince Jaehaerys. Now, in my opinion, this is an excellent choice to have someone audition for the role with. This is going to be their defining moment in the show, and I don't know if it's going to happen in season 1, but one thing I do know is that it will be amazing to watch an actress be able to react to that. Not necessarily like you're enjoying her misery, but just to watch something that traumatic on screen. The actor, or actress rather, that's going to pull that off is going to be amazing to watch. Now, I have mentioned this before in several videos, and most of those are linked down below in the description, but I'll summarize it. So after the death of King Viserys I, Queen Alicent at the time decided to crown her son Aegon. He became the usurper king in King's Landing, and his wife was Helaena, like I mentioned in this video. Then, sort of opposing that, on Dragonstone, you have Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen crowning herself as the true queen of Westeros. So it probably would have been really easy for the two of them to just marry each other and then both of them rule, but this is Game of Thrones and nothing is ever that simple, otherwise we wouldn't have this story. So the fact that you have these two opposing factions, the Green versus the Blacks, shit is bound to happen. And one of those things is that they need to send out for adversaries in the wars to come. They need to call their banners, if you will. And I guess I should note before I go any further that the main reason why Queen Rhaenyra and King Aegon II didn't really marry each other is because Queen Rhaenyra was always going to be next in line for the Iron Throne. Her parents' marriage resulted in sons who only either died in the womb or died a few days after birth. So when her father married Alicent, she successfully got kids, and that she kind of knew that since her father now has sons, her lineage, or her succession to the Iron Throne, would kind of come into question. Even though her father never changed that, she always knew that, and then she passed her resentment on to her children. And these children, one of these being Aegon II, her younger brother, who is Queen Alicent's child, he has that resentment passed on from his mother in order to hate Queen Rhaenyra and her sons. And I know I am grossly summarizing at parts here, but basically there is a fight between the 6 boys in their youths, and one of the boys tries to mount a dragon, the other one says nah, and then an eye gets slit, and that resentment gets held until they're much older. And Aemon One-Eye, son of Queen Alicent, meets up with Prince Viserys, who is the son of Queen Rhaenyra, on the battlefield. Now, the story goes that Prince Viserys was sent on a mission by his mother that was considered to be a lot safer than the one that his brother Jaehaerys was sent on. So Viserys was sent on a mission to Storm's End to go and get House Baratheon to pledge their support. And when he arrived there, unbeknownst to him, Prince Aemon One-Eye, the kid who's, I guess it would be his uncle, but he took his eye out when he was a youth. Remember, they were fighting over King Aegon II, or Prince Aegon at the time, calling all of Rhaenyra's children bastards of House Strong. So this caused the boys a fight to break out, and in it, Aemon broke Prince Lucerys' nose, and Prince Lucerys took out his dagger and slashed out Aemon's eye. So now here we are multiple years later, both of the men are grown-up dragon riders and they're meeting on technically the field of battle, even though Prince Lucerys swore on a 7-pointed star that he would not take place, or that he would not, do any fighting. When he arrives at House Baratheon Stormend, when he arrives there, Prince Aemon is already there, and the two of them Prince Aemon exchanges remarks, basically starts talking shit about Lucerys, and Lucerys, being the bigger person, just ignores it. Now, while Prince Lucerys, son of Rhaenyra, is there, Boros Baratheon asks him, like, which one of my daughters do you want to wed? And Prince Lucerys is with that Ned Stark type honor and says he's promised to his cousin. And it's sort of insinuated that Boros at that time frame is unwilling to help Lucerys. So he tells the two boys, Prince Aemon and Prince Lucerys, that they are not allowed to fight under his roof. So Prince Lucerys left and was escorted back to his dragon, and when he gets outside, there's like this terrible storm going on, and after he takes off his dragon, Arax is younger, so he's not as experienced in flying in a storm. Now Aemon, his dragon, who he claimed at the age of 10, Vhagar, was actually flown, and I should have mentioned this the other day, I just forget sometimes because the Targaryens have a super complicated history, but Vhagar was rode by Helaena, who was like really close with Rhaenyra, and I did talk about her a lot in the last video I did that focused on Rhaenyra. But when Helaena died in 120 AC from childbirth, Prince Aemon One Eye was 10 years old, came up and claimed her dragon. So during this storm with Prince Lucerys flying off on his dragon Arax, who's really young, Prince Aemon being on Vhagar, who was rode by Visenya during Aegon's conquest, is a much more experienced dragon. So this storm is nothing, and he ends up killing Lucerys. According to Gildane, there was not much of a fight when the dragons met above Shipwrecker Bay. Basically, if there was a skirmish, it ended really quickly, and Arax fell down to the ocean and was washed up a few days later. His head and neck were detached from his body, and then a few days after that, Prince Lucerys' corpse washed up as well. And obviously, Prince Aemon One Eye and Vhagar survived the battle for right then. They died horrifically later. But as a response to this, obviously Rhaenyra was devastated. The fact that she told her son to swear on the 7-pointed star that he would not take place in a battle meant one thing, and that was that Aemon obviously instigated this battle or this attack. And this is probably even more gut-wrenching for Rhaenyra, because this is her little younger brother who killed her actual son. And you gotta realize Damon must be pretty hurt too, because that's his nephew, and his wife's old dragon was used to kill his great nephew. And when Helaena and Damon were married, Vhagar and his dragon, they rode all around the world together. So Damon bonded with Vhagar. I'm pretty sure it was even more gut-wrenching for him, which motivated him to do Blood and Cheese. Now, I've mentioned this before in my recent videos, but Prince Damon was known as Lord Fleablood. He spent so much time there that everybody knew his face, so he knew most of the shady individuals that went there. As a matter of fact, when he was forming the City Watch, he actually had Blood, who was like the one who actually kills Prince Jaehaerys. He actually had him working on the City Watch, and the only reason why Blood was removed from the City Watch was because he got drunk and raped a woman. So Damon, using his connections in Flea Bottom and his mistress of whisperers, Mysaria, he actually has her hire Blood, and then Cheese, who was a rat catcher who knew all the inner workings inside the Red Keep, because, well, it was his job to go back there and kill all the rats. So they end up sneaking into the Tower of the Hand and gagging Alicent, and then, tying everybody up and making Princess Helaena choose which one of her sons she wants to die. Now, she chooses Maegor at first because she thinks that he's too young to really realize anything that's going to happen, but of course, so I've been saying Maegor for the longest, it's Maelor. She chooses Maelor, but then Blood lops off the head of Prince Jaehaerys in one single blow. It's a pretty devastating scene, and I could totally see why, if this person's leak is correct, why they're choosing this moment or some of that dialogue to be the auditioning role for the actress who will play Helaena Targaryen. Now, just a little bit of info from this person, just about how far they're all along in filming. This person claims that in this timeline, the death of Viserys happens in the first episode. They also mentioned that there are a lot of events happening in the first several episodes that will take a while to play out, and as a result, the average show watcher may seem confused. He says that they are further into filming, meaning that location scouting will be finished by the end of this year, and the show will have most of the sets completely built by the end of this year as well. Well, alright, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this video. The like goal is gonna be 420. Also, make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications turned on, so that way you'll get alerted every single time I drop a video throughout this long night. Super special shout out to every single person watching this video, and a super special thank you to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHunt'sReviews. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. My name is Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Review.